Happy Friday the 13th. Today on Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the Mezco Cinema of Fear Series 3 Jason Voorhees figure from Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday. So finally dipping back into the Mezco well with my horror figures. It's been a little while outside of Figure Wars, which also means this was one of the early horror figures that made it into my collection. I hopped on horror collecting right around the time of Cinema of Fear Series 2, so I lucked out and got that Part 6 Jason that proved elusive, and I wasn't able to get my hands on the Part 4 for a very long time, and then I was able to get a few different NECA and Mezco figures along the way, but still pretty early on, Mezco did this figure, and it was sort of a redo of a McFarlane figure. McFarlane did their own version of Jason Goes to Hell, which is so freaking ugly, I never bothered to pick it up. But this was a fitting choice because Jason Goes to Hell was kind of the Friday the 13th movie of the 90s. It almost sort of became Jason's new iconic look, as weird as that could be. We kind of saw the same thing happen again once Freddy vs. Jason came out. That look of Jason permeated everything. But even through the time of Jason X, it seemed like this was the major representation of Jason Voorhees. And it definitely makes sense that it would be Mezco's third outing after hitting two of the other most popular movies in the franchise. And just like any other Mezco Cinema of Fear figure, this one comes loaded down with accessories, so let's take a look. Jason, of course, comes with his machete. The detail's okay, the handle's pretty bare, there's little rivets sculpted in but not painted. It's a silver blade and just kind of a splash of blood going up and down the whole thing. Mezco is never very good about giving their blood a sense of direction on the blade. It's just kind of odd because if the blade was this soaked through with blood, it probably would be further up on the blade, but yeah, it's splitting hairs here. It looks fine. It looks like every stereotypical machete you'd find at a Halloween costume store. We also get the little Voorhees demon dagger here with a very well sculpted handle. It's very cool looking for being so tiny. It's a great little piece there. A nice blade on it as well. We get the black heart of Jason Voorhees. This is the exact same piece we got with the Part 6 Jason, just given a nice black wash of paint. Looks pretty cool though, it's neat. Obviously, it's not something you'd have Jason holding or anything like that. This was all that was left of him when he gets blown up in the first 5 minutes of the movie and gets eaten by that paramedic guy, which I've seen people actually knock out a custom of, taking the figure made of that actor from one of the Rocky movies and finding a little lab coat for him and having him with his heart in their hands, which is kind of messed up, but kind of funny. And then the best of the accessories, the little Jason Vagina Demon. Very cool. Not really the color I think it was. I believe it actually was like a fleshy color in the movie, but this is just a black thing. Little tail, no rear legs, arms on it. There's decent paint detail and sculpt detail on something that's just an accessory and so small, but Mezco always kind of gave us this kind of stuff. I loved it. It was so cool to almost get a diorama's worth of figure parts with your figure. I mean, this set basically tells the whole story of the movie. You have Jason, you have the heart that infected the other people to be possessed by Jason, and then you have kind of the in-between reincarnated, not quite, still need to crawl up somebody's leg and go inside them Jason Fetus monster. By the way, as I mentioned, this goes great with your little demon fetus Freddy's Dead thing because now you have two little fetus monster creatures from slasher movies. It's wonderful. As you can see here, there's also a little tilt in the head. You can go up and down, and you can rotate it, and the arms will rotate as well. Now on my display, I'm always afraid I'm going to lose this dagger, so actually I put it in the demon's mouth to hold on to it. I feel like that's kind of a easy way to keep that accessory safe. The head sculpt on this figure is kind of hit or miss for me. Now, this was a very odd incarnation of Jason. He's so beat up and messed up that the mask has become part of him. And it's very small and his skin's kind of growing around it and all that. And Mezco didn't quite capture that effect. The mask very much still looks raised off the figure, and the straps are definitely digging into the head, but the mask just doesn't look too good. The crack through the eye here is pretty neat, going all the way through. The holes in the mask are decent. Up here, we could see a red line going on to the scar on his head, and that should be the iconic axe wound from the movie. But by just doing paint on the mask, and not very well, and not sculpting it in there, it really just gives a disjointed illusion that I don't like. And also, you can see the mask, as I said before, kind of looks like it's pulling away from the face, almost like you could remove it, but you can't as far as I could tell. The one big kudos I could give this face is the fact that I actually do see a resemblance to Kane Hodder here. And it's a weird thing to say, seeing as that all you can really see of the actor is his eye, but Kane Hodder kind of has very memorable eyes. They have this kind of weird droopy look, especially when he's playing Jason, and they really captured it here. And the one eye that Jason has, they do a decent job. The blood on here, though, is just too red. The straps are decently done, though, and the rest of the detailing on the head, the cuts and bumps and everything, I like the paint detail on it, and the sculpting's not too bad. Carries down onto the neck as well, and then goes into the body. The body is all torn up. It's the tucked-in shirt, which I hate the look of with Jason, but that's more the movie than anything else. He's got all these extra rips and holes in his shirt, torn down bits of it. A lot of good detail in the paint on here. I do like that. Just a stupid costume for him, but there's a lot of pull lines on it, looking like he's twisting in the shirt and everything, which is cool. Tons of rips. This costume was so complex, it was actually a full bodysuit of the way Jason looked under the clothes and had the ripped clothes put on top in the movie, which is neat. I always love the upper part of the sleeve where you can see all the little tiny rips, but you can see a lot through them, going down to the arms. Over here we have a big rip in the shoulder. Now the joints up here at the top, it's a blue plastic that does match the figure pretty well, but it's almost needs to be a little darker just because it stands out so much against the very dirty rest of the figure. The hands are another sore point for me. They're just too big. They're just very large looking, and this one especially is pretty goofy looking, very odd, and just not too well sculpted, but they do what they need to do. Their hands. Another gripe I have with this is something that Mezco did a lot around this time is giving us these hands with the thumb bent down. Just weird. I guess it was to get the accessory into the hand easier or something, but it just looks so strange and unnatural. I don't like it at all. Moving down, we got the belt buckle, we got the pants that look just like the shirt. It's almost like he's wearing Michael Myers' jumpsuit in this movie. It almost looks like one piece, even though it's definitely not. I believe in the movie, the pants are actually a slightly different color that they didn't capture here in the figure. But some nice rips in there around the leg. You can see his knees and the decayed flesh through it, which is cool. Some great wrinkles. Mezco loved to do the wrinkles like nuts on their figures. Maybe a little over-exaggerated, but I like it. Then we have some decent boots, not a lot of detail, but some brown, dirty dry brushing over top of the rest of the boot, so nothing too big to complain about. This figure lacks a lot of articulation, which is definitely a bummer. It has a ball-jointed neck with a pretty good range. It goes up really high, it goes down an okay amount, and definitely does side to side and tilts and all that good stuff, which is just fine. The arms will go out to the side very well and rotate. We have a bend at the elbow, but no rotation. The hands will rotate as well as bend. We have a ball joint at the mid-torso. It's actually one of the barbell double-ended ones, so you get a lot of range of motion out of that. And then from the waist down, like every other Cinema of Fear figure past Series 1, he is a statue. So right now I'm actually a little torn as to whether or not I want to recommend this Jason figure. I feel like I bring in a lot of baggage with it, and just he's not a favorite design of mine. It's my least favorite Friday the 13th movie. Just a lot of strikes against it to begin with. So I was sitting here going back and forth on whether or not I want to recommend him, and then I remembered I already reviewed this figure. Yes, way before Outside the Box reviews. I had actually written a guest review on Michael Crawford's toy review website, mwctoys.com. I reviewed both this and the Leatherface figure from the same wave, one of my favorite Cinema of Fear figures, which I have reviewed already on Outside the Box reviews. So you can go back and take a look at that review if you haven't already seen it. And looking at what I said in that review, I realized, even though I wasn't using these terms back then, I didn't recommend this figure. So I'm going to stick with my own opinion and not recommend this figure. I didn't recommend this figure back when Mezco was doing some of their best stuff, back at the height of their horror figure making, when I think they were outstriping NECA in everything they were doing. And now that I'm so spoiled with NECA figures and the things they've been doing now, there's no way I can recommend this guy. Just because he wasn't that great back when I got him, and time has not been kind to him. So, I not recommend for Jason from Jason Goes to Hell. And to look at what Mezco did with their Cinema of Fear line, this is almost the black sheep of the family. With all the Jasons they did, we got a pretty cool part 4 Jason, a very cool part 6 Jason, this guy, a pretty darn cool part 3 Jason, and the only other figure that matches this in terms of meh factor, actually surpasses this in terms of meh factor, who am I kidding, is that remake Abomination they did. But that wasn't actually a proper release in the Cinema of Fear line, that was kind of its own individual release. So in the Cinema of Fear proper, this is the worst Jason of the bunch. It kind of stinks. I know a lot of people enjoy this figure for the detail on it, the paintwork, the sculpting detail, and for the most part, I understand where they're coming from outside of the mask, which I just think was done very poorly. But it's not enough to save it. The figure doesn't look good enough, and the fact that it came out alongside that Leatherface, that, as I said, is my favorite figure that Mezco did in the horror line, it just makes it look that much worse by comparison. Make sure you check out Outside the Box Reviews on Facebook. There'll be a link below. Also, check out Outside the Box Reviews on Instagram. Outside the Box Reviews is the username on there. And what are you planning to do up at Camp Crystal Lake? Smoking a little dope, having a little premarital sex, and getting slaughtered?